Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now, today we're joined by Bernard Reisz. Did I say that correctly? How was my pronunciation?
It's Reisz, Bernard Reisz.
Reisz. I'm very sorry. That's a terrible pronunciation by me once again.
No, I get that all the time.
Okay.
It happens all the time.
So I'm not just the only dumb one then,
No,
I guess.
No. It's like standard. Every recording is like, it always starts off that way.
My apologies. But glad to have you on the show. Excited to jump into today's conversation. But before we do that, do you want to give a little brief introduction into who you are and what you've been up to?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's rumble. So CPA, and I've got, just to give you the context, because I need to have a license to say a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say. So I do have a securities license. I do have life, accident, and health and P&C licenses, and a whole bunch of other designations. Essentially, a guy that nerded out on everything tax and financial. And I've realized that there's a real need for financial and tax info that is comprehensive and integrated and is really trying to help folks. Too many folks out there are getting information that is fragmented, one-dimensional, and more often than not, it's coming from somebody that wants to sell them something. So what I've done is to empower people. One of the first things that I did was, aside from your regular CPA stuff and advisory, is a big focus on self-directed retirement accounts, which is a niche area. Lots of folks out there that will set up an account for you, but there's almost nobody out there that really understands how they integrate with your total financial profile and all the nuances of actually operating them compliantly and maximizing their value. And since then, as we mentioned earlier, I've realized there's a need to broaden that. And so I've got a group going where I share daily tips covering everything from estate planning, life insurance, long-term care, capital gains taxation. Overall, I'm on a mission to empower people financially and help them navigate the financial area.
Also, what is that group called if people want to?
Yeah, so right now it is the Resure Financial. That's RESURE Financial. Resure Financial, member space. It's members.resurefinancial.com. Free space to join. You can always go hop in there, view prior recordings, and on the contrary, you can invite people. The more, the merrier. We want to touch and impact as many people as we can. Very cool.
Very cool. So what kind of people do you work with, and what do they come for you for? Everything tax related, or do you specifically work on certain aspects, tax planning? How does it work?
Awesome question. And this is really defies the mold. It's so many different things. And it's not that I know everything. I'd be the first to say that I do not, right? But the real key to getting the right answer is identifying the right questions and the desire to identify the questions and then getting the answer to those questions. Too many folks, right? If you work with some financial pro, whether it's your accountant, attorney, financial advisor, whoever it may be, somehow they have the answers to everything. And that is not a good sign. Because if everybody knows the answers to everything off the top of their heads, it must be that they're making some assumptions. And assumptions never do you any favors. So it's actually being open to ask questions, explore new things, learn new things. And I'm glad to share some of the stories that I share and I've been sharing them in this network where you see how it's really that desire to question things, and then see how different areas interact, that really gets folks the best results. How do many people get to me, though, to answer your question? A lot of it starts with self-directed retirement accounts. But once they meet me that way, then they're like, oh, Bernard, I have this thing with my estate plan. I have this thing with my real estate tax. I have this thing with my insurance. And what's really cool is very often they're like thinking, oh, Bernard, this is a quick question. They more or less think that whoever is selling them the product they think they've got it all figured out. And then they're like, Bernard, just just review it. It'll be 15 minutes of your time. Just take a look at it. And then I take a look at it. I'm like, nah, here are 10 questions for you. Have you thought about this? And then it's like, okay, go back to the drawing board and we get it right, taking everything into account.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, because there's so many gray areas and so many different avenues and just so much stuff that goes into this, right? It's you need someone smart like yourself to help guide you and to help you understand it. From your experiences, maybe just on a high level, we'll dive deeper on the second part of this interview, but what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make and common mistakes that you see people make?
So the most common mistake, if I'll talk at a more conceptual level, and more than the specific technical mistakes, is not viewing tax tools and financial tools the same way they view an investment. We all understand that when you do and get an investment, right, you got to do due diligence. You calculate your ROI, and not just your ROI, your risk-adjusted ROI, right? Because we don't know, results are never guaranteed. Nobody's got a crystal ball, right? And sometimes actually I do find people that say, Bernard, I have this investment. There's a guy on a show or somebody, and he says, I put in this money, he's guaranteeing 12% per year, cash on cash. And I'm like, who's guaranteeing that? Who's guaranteeing that, right? The deal's got to pay, so the deal's got to pay for it, and it may work out, it may not, but understand that if you're doing it because you think it's guaranteed, there is no guarantee, right? So do your due diligence. Do the numbers make sense? Understand the potential risk and reward, and then you do it, right? And when you do due diligence, you vet the sponsor, right? You say, who's putting the deal together? Who's running the show here? Do they have a background that is both makes them honorable and expert, right? Because you got to be both. You can be very well-meaning, but not know what you're doing. And you could also know what you're doing, but not be well-meaning. So you got to look for a sponsor that, vet the sponsor, and then you vet the deal. And so does this deal make sense? Does it pencil out? So real estate and investing, everybody understands that, or almost everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody. When you go ahead and you do tax tools, somehow you see people say, oh, this guy, he showed up on a podcast and he said, you can do this tax strategy and you'll save $100,000 in taxes. You got to view that just like an investment. Do your due diligence. It's tax strategies are just an investment. That's all they are, right? There's an ROI, which, all right, what's the ROI? $100,000 saved in taxes. There's your ROI. Now let's calculate the risk-adjusted ROI. Is the person that's telling you to do this, does he have the background to actually be able to tell you whether or not this is good or not good? Yes, there are lots of gray areas in tax, but there is black and white. So sometimes I hear that mistake. People say, oh, it's all gray. You can say whatever you want. No, the art is to know where, there are a lot of shades of gray, but there's also black and white, and you got to know where each of those are. And then, so vet the sponsor, so to speak, of the tax play, and vet the play itself. Understand that there's going to be risk there, and you just have to know what it is. And then you can make an informed decision. And same for all financial products, legal products, whether you're looking at setting up some sort of trust structure or buy some insurance product or some annuity. You've got to due diligence it the same way you would due diligence an investment. So to sum it up, what I think a common mistake is, people do not view their financial, legal, and tax products as an investment, and they should.
Yeah. And on that point then, do you have any suggestions or recommendations how you can find the right person, find the person that, like you said, it's one thing to hear someone say, hey, you can save $100,000, but someone that's going to do it right and that can actually execute it and not get you audited by the IRS, right? How can people find a good tax
So
system?
the general rule is, number one, I'd love to say join my group, right? We're going to teach you.
Yeah.
Right. But beyond that, there are certain characteristics that you want to look for. And the folks that are really out to help you and have the expertise, number one, there's going to be more nuance there, right? They're not going to oversimplify things. There's going to be nuance, and they're going to put that nuance in front of your face, and they're going to point it out to you in the hope that you'll make an informed decision. The folks that just want to sell you something and don't have the expertise are going to oversimplify, number one. So they're going to make it really simple. All you got to do is just sign a dotted line and it's done. So the folks that oversimplify, as a quote that I always quote, I can't resist. I use it every day in my recordings. Albert Einstein said, make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. So the folks that are out to help you are not going to oversimplify. And that's number one. Number two, the folks that are out to help you are going to be talking to your mind. They're going to be talking the type of language that's going to require you to think. The folks that want to sell you are going to be using buzzwords and appealing to your emotions. So you may kind of something more of an impulse purchase. So those are two characteristics I think you want to look for. The people that are appealing to your mind, that's really what it is. They're using their mind. So they're not oversimplifying, and they're talking about things in a logical way rather than using emotional triggers.
Yeah, that's great advice. Because obviously, once you find that one person, right, it's like anything in real estate, right? You find a great property manager, you find a great realtor, you find a great contractor, then you can use that person then to your advantage, right? And it benefits both parties, obviously, because they get paid, but that can make a big difference, right? Because taxes, as we all know, is a massive part of one of the biggest bills that we get, right? It's one of the biggest things you pay a lot of times.
The biggest. It's probably not like it is the biggest.
Right, yeah. And how you navigate that and how you handle that is so important, right?
Oh yeah. And it's becoming more and more important because now with the possible changes coming under a Biden administration, I actually did a 4-part series with an attorney close to a year ago on this topic, right? When this was just a discussion. Now, all the principles that are discussed then, it's about 4 hours of presentation. It's still all applicable today. And one of the things that I caution people about is with 1031 exchange possibly going away, and capital gains tax rates possibly going up, you're going to a lot of so-called tax strategies that, obviously I'm very well aware of for many, many years are going to gain more prominence. And you should just know the beauty of 1031 exchange is that it is completely above board. The IRS has told us exactly how to do it. The other so-called tax strategies that are out there are either not as good as they sound or not as true as they sound. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do them, but it means to say when the salesperson says, hey, I've got this tax strategy that you can execute instead of a 1031 exchange, you've got to find somebody that will tell you the true pros and cons before you actually execute on that.
Yeah. Again, it's just finding that right person, I think, right? And using them to your advantage, I think.
And that's really the real estate taxation, more so than other spaces to date, has presented incredible tax benefits in a way that is just so above board. That has been the beauty. And hopefully it will stay with us. And hopefully cost segregation, bonus depreciation, step up in basis, 1031 exchange, real estate professional status. Hopefully none of those will go away. But time will tell.
Yeah. That's like you said, the tax code, I can't remember who said it once, it told you the tax code will tell you what the government want you to do, right? How they want you to invest, right? Because they incentivize you to do certain things. And if you use that to your advantage, you can help really minimizes the taxes, right? And having, again, a good person that helps you along the way is important. Do you do tax planning as well? Or is it just, are you involved? How important do you think tax planning is? Because most people, they get to, I don't know, the start of the year or whatever, and they go to their CPA and they're like, hey, this is my income, this is my expenses, this is my write-offs, whatever. What can you do, right? But tax planning is different, right? It's something that you work with your tax professional throughout the year. How important do you think that is?
It is super important because there are very few things that you can do after the fact. And sometimes, again, one of the things though is, and you'll find this as a sign and indication of the folks that are really trying to help, they can't promise you that they're going to have the savings. It's the way it works is, hey, let's go through this. We can probably, in our experience, we find opportunities to save you taxes. But no guarantees, because no two folks are alike. Yes, we can just tell you sign up for this syndicated conservation easement and you'll get a tax deduction, right? But, right, this is what they won't tell you is the risk associated with that and all the issues, right? So now the folks like myself that, you know, before the IRS got on top of the syndicated conservation easements, the folks that were saying, hey, slow down, just, you can do this, but you got to understand that there's risk here and that the devil is in the details of every deal. It wasn't a popular thing to say, because what was really popular is the guys that said, hey, sign here, we do a syndicated conservation easement, you're going to get, just give us $200,000 and you're going to get a $2 million charitable deduction, right? People like hearing that. But then when the IRS makes it a listed transaction, they get the Department of Justice involved. Then some people have remorse. So there are these tax strategies, so-called strategies, that are called, they're bottled, right? They're packaged. They'll sell them to anybody. It's kind of, you go into a store, you pull it off the shelf. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't need anybody to really think about your scenario, your business. It's like, sure, yeah, we'll set up a captive insurance company for you and you'll get deductions, right? Now, that's really easy for the folks that sell those things. The heavy lifting is to say, look at your scenario and say, no, we can do something more nuanced. We don't have to take any of these transactions that are heavily promoted and that are guaranteed to eventually get the IRS's attention. We can do stuff that are unique to you, right? And just optimize. That takes more knowledge, more expertise, and more work, but you can sleep well at night. Have you ever heard of Nassim Nicholas Taleb?
Yes, read his books. Yeah, he's great. Some great, love his books.
Okay, yeah. I would never say, obviously he's brilliant, but I don't have half the knowledge and philosophy and stuff that he has. But when I read the books, I'm like, the principles that he's espousing, a lot of that is the stuff that I'm always sharing with people. And he has an example that he calls it the turkey. I don't know exactly what he calls it, but you know what I'm talking about? The turkey
yeah. The turkey analogy, that turkey thinks everything is great until the day before Thanksgiving. He's having the best life ever. There is no issue, because the absence of evidence doesn't mean the what is the saying? The absence of evidence is
not evidence of absence.
Yes, yeah. So the turkey thinks everything is great, getting fed, fantastic, getting so much food. He's having the time of his life, all up until the day before Thanksgiving, where obviously things take a turn for the worse.
Yeah, and to just bring out a little more the nuance, right? If he says, if you imagine the turkey, they have a meeting, the turkey board, right? And they have their turkey analyst, and he's pointing at the trends. And he's probably saying things are really getting better and better and better, right? They're thinking we have, right? By now, these humans have been feeding us and caring for us for so long. The outlook is just getting better and better. But in reality, as you get nearer and nearer to Thanksgiving, the outlook is actually getting worse and worse. The exact opposite. The risk is accumulating and growing as you get nearer to Thanksgiving. So in the tax world, it's very much the same way. What tends to happen is somebody does some sort of tax, something clever, right? And it works. And then maybe his friends find out about it, or his CPA does it, a couple other clients. Gradually, you know, in the first 10 years of this being executed, it's done by a handful of people, right? But then, and those are the people that maybe have really smart tax advisors and it's tailored to their situation. Then it gets to be a little more popular. And then somebody that says, hey, we can just package this and start mass marketing it, right? And not figure out, and we don't have to customize it by the taxpayer, by one individual basis. We're just going to figure out a way to mass market this. And then more and more people do it. And then it grows in popularity. You got the network effect. And suddenly there's this exponential growth and people are like, wow, nobody ever got in trouble with this, right? Because look, it's been going on for 20 years now. But the reality is, once you reach that stage where it's being marketed by people that are not tax professionals and they have it prepackaged, that's exactly when it gets the attention of the IRS. So the fact that something has worked well, right? And I know scenarios, folks that have done things in the self-directed space, Mitt Romney, Max Levchin, Peter Thiel, right? They supposedly have IRAs that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, we don't know exactly what they did, but we can say probably that some of the stuff that they did may have been questionable, right? But they did it 20 years ago, and even prior to that, and it was a space that had much less going on, and it was their unique thing with their unique providers, right? Today, you know, when clients of mine ask, Bernard, I want to do this kind of transaction, I say, hey, you can do it, but understand that this is a space now that has grown, and it's probably a matter of time before these things get looked at a little more closely. And what you're doing is great. It may never get looked at, and even if it gets looked at, you may it may pass. But just be informed. Know that it's gray. Let's figure out how you can optimize it, right? So that it's as above board as possible, and that even if it gets questioned, we can isolate the impact. But that's really what it is. In the tax space, as things go mass market, that's actually when the potential downside is accumulating.
Yeah, yeah. Man, this is so interesting. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, man. It's because people, you know, I think taxes is like, oh, yeah, I don't really like taxes, and not many people do, but I think it's something more people, you've got to pay attention to, and you've got to be aware of what you're doing, where your money is going, and who you're using, because it can save you a lot of money, but it can also get you in trouble, and you've got to understand that. So I appreciate you coming on and explaining a lot of that. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I like to incorporate some wrestling related real estate questions. And the first question is, what would your wrestling name be?
I should have prepped for this. I gotta say, I love the question. Okay. I do not, and I love it because you know what? What I really love about the question is, because frankly, I've been on a lot of shows, and I kind of know, you know, there's questions. Everybody's got this kind of questions that they ask, but I know like more or less there are 2 or 3 formats, and I could just freestyle it. I love the fact that this is unique. I got to see, I'm thinking back to like the days when I actually knew what was going on in the World Wrestling Federation.
Yeah.
And who was there? Like, are there any names there that I could appropriate?
There was one guy called IRS, which was the Erwin. God, I can't remember his name. Schneider. I can't remember. I can't believe I can't remember his name. But I had another tax guy on there. He stole his name, so I don't think he could be his name.
Let's see. Actually, can I ask you to help me?
Okay.
I'm groping here. I gotta discuss the names that come first to mind for whatever reason. It's like, who come? I think of wrestling, and maybe I'm dating myself a little bit. I think Undertaker, Kevin Hart, Doink.
Yeah, the clown. Yeah. Well, you're from Brooklyn, right? Or you live in Brooklyn?
Yes.
So maybe something with Brooklyn. There was a wrestler called Brooklyn Brawler, but maybe Brooklyn Banker or Brooklyn Benefactor, Brooklyn. I don't know.
Who are those 2 guys that were? They wore like camouflage fatigues. They wore like black tank tops, and the gray and white. It was a tag team. There were 2 guys.
The Nasty Boys? No. No, I'm not sure.
No, not.
We'll come back to it if it's something
okay.
Comes out. Yeah. Toughest question you've been asked all day, right? Harder than any tax question. At least you know the answer.
Well, I was thinking usually you ask you a question, you know where to go to find the answer.
Right.
Here it's like, I don't know which section of the code is going to talk about this.
I think there is a wrestling name generator online or something like that. So the next question is, every wrestler has a special move. What is your special move in taxes or in real estate?
It really is the question. It's the questioning. I think the most valuable thing are the questions. You never know where you're going to get. And so with my clients, it's not like we're always executing the same move. If you want to know the thing that I'm known for most, it's going to be the self-directed retirement accounts. But that's because that's actually something that lends itself a little more to helping people with a uniform way. But once we work with people one-on-one, no two people are alike, and you never know where it's going to go.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, it's that uniqueness of every individual client, I'm sure. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your business?
Biggest body slam I've taken, there are actually a couple. So you got to ask the biggest, right? I'm going to be honest, right? You learn a lot of lessons. So one of them is, I think, I've been hesitant to fully trust yourself in a range of areas. Sometimes you question your own abilities. And I think it's, in the one hand, it's actually an asset to question yourself. But at the same time, whether it's questioning yourself anytime you're proposing a tax strategy, whether you're questioning yourself before you put your name, face, and content out there, so that's been something. It's time. For a long time, I could never get my face on social media. I didn't do it. And people were telling me, Bernard, you've got to put your face out there. You've got a profile on LinkedIn. You've got a profile on on Facebook, but you've got a logo there. You haven't gotten your, and you really got to embrace yourself, and don't try to copy others. Sometimes hey, he's killing it, so let me just copy him. But it doesn't work. You got to be true to yourself and be ready to put yourself out there. Yeah, very true. Very true. You can, because people see through that. I think, you can only be yourself. And I think people appreciate that when you're genuine to who you are. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope, getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it and how did you overcome it? Frankly, the only way to overcome it is to take small steps. And you've got to take action. One of the things that people sometimes I get asked, what are your tips for people? That's a common question that you get at the end of these podcasts. What's your number one rule? So I've got a 3-part rule, but one of those is take the action. I know I see it also with many clients that get stuck in the analysis phase forever and ever. Ultimately, got to pull the trigger. And it's amazing how you pull the trigger once. You have just crossed, and I say this financial advisor clients as well. I try to convince people you don't need, again, the financial advisors here are not going to like this. You don't need the financial advisor. You can be empowered. And the analogy that I use is the chasm that separates you from financial empowerment is not that wide. It's very deep, but it's narrow. So you'll find that you can hop right over that and you're in a totally different space. But you just got to be ready to take that action. And there's no substitute. The only thing that leads to action, it's action. So it's not I don't even think this mindset, the remedy for analysis paralysis is not more mindset stuff. Just take that action. Just do something. Put one foot in front of the other so that you've transitioned to out of the realm of thought into the realm of action. Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Well, man, this has been fun. Before we go though, if people want to reach out to you, if people want to get in touch, if they want to find out more about what you've got going on and how they can maybe work with you, how can they do that? So many ways. And I look forward to connecting with folks. And one of the things that I've done right now to be able to reach people is create a member space. That's members.reassurefinancial.com. By now we're accumulating recordings in there. You can go in there. I think you'll find them really eye-opening. They all contain true stories where I illustrate the nuance of the financial strategies, tools, and products, whether that's the legal, tax, or financial space. I love showing people how there's a deeper layer and a more integrated and holistic way to think about things. So check us out there. You can always Google my name, Bernard Reisz. That's Reisz. or Resure Financial should lead you to good places. And we always say, let me know, especially if you find stuff that you don't like, because I want to know what's out there. But check us out, 401kcheckbook.com and Resure Financial.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, man. That was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Barry, I love this. Thank you for having me on. And I really appreciate that your show is unique. I'll have to come back again when I actually have a name.
Yeah, we never did cover that. I'll definitely have you back for that. So cool.